This hour, we have been exploring the opioid crisis. It's in fact the subject of a new HBO documentary called The Crime of the Century. When you hear the phrase the opioid crisis, it can sound like it's referring to a natural disaster with a beginning and an end. But as Alex Gibney's HBO documentary makes devastatingly clear, the opioid crisis is more than a human tragedy that's claimed 500,000 lives. It's part of what America's become, a nation of addicts. Joining me on the morning show is Dr. Raymond Pomm, a psychiatrist specializing in addiction and substance abuse. Dr. Pomm, good morning.
Good morning, Bruce. Thanks for having me.
So the reality is this crisis, the opioid crisis, didn't just happen. It was fed by greed, the greed of big pharma, the greed of politicians who failed to call for proper regulations. Now we have a pandemic. Did that feed the problem?
Oh, absolutely. It's gotten so much worse.
If we know somebody's suffering, how can we best intervene? How can we help them help themselves?
One of the most important points to remember is people who have this disease are already stigmatized. They're already feeling shameful, very guilty, and any perception of judgment is going to just drive them further into their addiction. You really have two choices in your response to individuals that are suffering from this disease. One is your response helping their disease, or is it helping their recovery? And that's something that's really, really important to understand. Being there for them, understanding, and sitting down with them and offering them choices without judgment is extremely beneficial. It's not beneficial working with them when they're under the influence, but waiting for them to be cleaner, less under the influence, and in a safe environment is very beneficial. You still might get resistance, and worse comes to worse, if you have to and you're scared that they're going to die because of their disease, one can always go through what's called more of an involuntary route, which is a Marchman Act, and going to the first floor courthouse and filling out paperwork, which actually brings them before a judge and requires them to go to treatment. Many times, unfortunately, addicts are in so much denial about their disease, they're just basically willing to die rather than get help.
So let me ask
sometimes, go ahead.
Yeah, let me ask you about that. A lot of times these opioids are given because they're in some sort of physical pain. So what if they don't want to give up the meds, or as you say, they're in denial, or they refuse? How do you approach that?
So if family members can get together and speak with them, that'd be really important. You can call a treatment center and they can help you with an actual intervention. That does take some professional guidance. The bottom line is sometimes you don't have a choice except to reach out to the authorities through the Marchman Act and start helping them through a legal process. They'll be upset at first, but after they get clean and sober, they'll be very, very grateful.
Is the reality this really becomes a family disease?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my biggest frustrations in the treatment world is we have an individual who's suffering from the disease in treatment. In the meantime, the family who has been responding to the disease for all the years that they've been living with it have developed pathological patterns. And if the family doesn't get help too, those pathological patterns continue. And the individual comes back from treatment back into the same environment that was created by that dynamic, which was very ill and disease-ridden. And it makes it that much more difficult for the individual to sustain recovery. Having the family involved in the treatment process is critical.
What are some of the best resources to turn to?
So these days we have medications that help. We have medication for opioid addiction. We have medication for alcohol. Gateway Community Services is a very strong local resource where these medications are offered, as well as detoxification and residential treatment. River Region Human Services also offers residential treatment and methadone maintenance, which is a further discussion, I would assume. The reality is there is help. It's a matter of making the phone call.
Dr. Pomm, thank you for some very good advice. Appreciate you.
Thank you.